that I have with me for the first hour and a half, Mr. Peter Bleksley. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're a bit bright and sunny and cheery, aren't you, for this time of the day?
Well, if you're going to get up before the crack of dawn,
have you been to bed
and have an hour? Oh, I have. Oh, at my age, believe you me, when I set
bed at 7,
when I 8 actually, right? I pushed the boat out and was in my Uncle Ned by 8 o'clock.
Good for you. How very, very sensible. So bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as we say.
Indeed.
Peter Bleksley, as you will see as we pursue the next hour and a half, you will agree with me by about 7:30 this morning that this man should actually be the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. I don't know if they'll ever ask you back. Do you think, Pete, is that likely? I mean, I think you'd be a worthy replacement to the woke Mark Rowley, frankly.
You've got more chance of Nelson getting his eye back than me ever being invited to return to the Metropolitan Police.
Would you go back? If you got a call from the Home Secretary under maybe a slightly different government in 2029, they said, hey, Bleksley, we've got a job for you, what would you do?
Well, the thing is, you see, I only ever occupied the lowest detective rank because
the coalface.
That greasy polar promotion was not for me. I chose specialisation.
Proper policing.
Yeah, and as a result, I had the most astonishing career. I went to places that I never dreamt I would and spent a lot of time working undercover and gained a lot of skills and specialisms and exposure to various parts of
But Pete,
policing.
that's exactly what is missing from the higher echelons of the police service.
Correct.
Police service or police force?
Service.
Is it
service
or
police
force?
Service. Don't use the word force. You'll trigger some of the fluffins.
That's way too aggressive.
Yes. Oh, goodness me.
Way too aggressive. Anyway, so there you go. Look, in the first 3 or 4 minutes already, that is all that is wrong with British policing. That you haven't got old hands that have got their hands dirty in the nicest possible way at the coalface of British policing. That's why policing is in the state it's in, as I'm sure that we will rehearse over the next hour and a half. But the first thing that I want to talk to you about, Peter Bleksley, is tonight marks a milestone, a turning point in British broadcasting, particularly where sport's concerned. Now, there's a football thing going on apparently at the moment, which we'll talk about later, which I don't know anything about because I don't follow football. Peter Bleksley does. He happens to support a team, the Queen's Park Rangers or something similar to that. You can hear him sighing. But let's talk about the fact that tonight will be the first match of the day to be hosted, here we go, since Mr. Gary Lineker was removed, I think we can say that, removed from his match of the day pedestal. A little round of applause, I think, that we no longer have to suffer Gary Lineker at 10 o'clock or whatever it is, I've got no idea, on a Saturday night. I put this to you, Mr. Bleksley, that the viewing figures will not only not suffer at all, but they might even go up.
Well, I, as a huge football fan, have been all my life. I do tend to watch this Match of the Day programme, but it gets repeated on a Sunday morning. I tend to work Saturday evening, so I don't get to see it, but I watch it on a Sunday morning. And when Lineker was in the chair, and it will be exactly the same with its new reincarnation, what I do is I get up, start the show, pause it, and attend to my ablutions, make a cuppa, maybe pop outside on the patio and have a cig. Don't smoke, kids. It's a ridiculous, smelly, antisocial, life-shortening habit. Don't do it. And the such like, make a bit of toast. And so I keep myself... so the show is on enough of a delay that when I sit down, I can fast-forward it and only watch the bits where there are people playing football.
So you skip Gary Lineker?
I completely skipped Gary Lineker. All the tiresome, woeful, nonsense football punditry, which is absolute nonsense. I mean, does anybody know what a false number 9 is? It's just cobblers.
Do you think all football punditry is nonsense? I mean,
yes.
I've got to be careful because we are sitting about 10 metres away from TalkSport here, but because I'm just not into football at all. I don't get it. I'm not an advocate. I'm not a fan. Whenever I do hear a little snippet of commentary from TalkSport or wherever else, I mean, it seems to be the most benign and obvious commentary, i.e. if we played better, we would have won. If we'd just scored one more goal, we would be in a better position. It's a game of two halves and so on. I don't see much intelligence, to be honest.
It's mind-numbingly tiresome. So I don't watch any of that. Even my own team, I watched 15 seconds of the manager's debrief after our defeat on Tuesday night away to Plymouth Argyle, and yes, I was in Plymouth, right? I watched 15 seconds of this manager just rolling out.
This is your own manager?
Yes.
The manager
rolling
of
out cliches, nonsense and drivel, and I vowed not to listen to one more word that he says for the rest of the season or for however long he's in charge of our team. I go to the games, I watch it, I don't need somebody to tell me all about it because I was there.
Well, or you were watching it on the telly or whatever. So, yeah, you don't need someone to tell you the bleeding obvious, particularly if it is wrapped up, as you say, in cliches and, sycophancy and so on. OK, all right, so let me know what you think of this. 0344 499 1000. Do you lament the demise of Mr Gary Lineker, audience? Tell us. I suspect most of you will not, certainly people that are used to listening to and watching this station, but some people might think that actually that £1.2 million hole that has been left on Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings is a shame, but I suspect he will be very, very soon forgotten. Gary Lineker, R.I.P. And I say that, of course, with big inverted commas. I don't think you're going to be missed, mate, and nor should you be. And now, of course, because you are unwound from the shackles of your BBC employment contract, you can, I guess, carry on without any criticism with your stupid political rants, your hypocrisy and your wokeness. And some people might look forward to that continuing. I certainly do not. But anyway, shall we move on to two other big characters?
Before we do, I'd just like to say that, you know, Gary Lineker has invested in a chain of migrant hotels. That's a complete fib, by the way. But I thought
you wouldn't put it past him.
Trigger you just for a moment or two.
Is that his spare room? Because he did famously say that he was going to take a migrant.
He
did take one.
He did.
For about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What did he do? It was like a revolving door at Lineker Towers. If you just come in and I've just got 27 members of the press outside just to show that you are coming into my home, and then presumably ejected them straight out the back into a van and off somewhere else. Anyway, look, I'm not going to give Gary Lineker any more satisfaction of talking about him on this channel any further. We need to talk about matters of great importance. Gary Lineker is not one of those, despite the fact we've just spent 6 or 7 minutes talking about him, Peter. Let's talk about Trump-Putin. So this is their meeting yesterday, happened at about 8:30 UK time in Anchorage in Alaska. You can see now if you're watching on YouTube the respective world leaders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, walking down the steps of their respective jets, shaking hands and getting on very, very well on the face of it. But of course, the newspapers and the media wires this morning are full of the fact that no deal was done. We shouldn't really be surprised, should we, that the men met for 3 or 4 hours over something as monumental and complicated and tragic, frankly, as the Ukraine-Russia war, but a deal was not done.
You know, we were just talking about inconsequential drivel in regards to football, right? In the build-up to this meeting yesterday, as I kind of flicked across some channels, which I should have known better than to be watching them, the amount of drivel that commentators, presenters were coming out with in the build-up to this meeting, when really the likelihood of anything concrete, of an immediate ceasefire being announced, was so hugely unlikely, not least of all because Vladimir Zelensky wasn't there.
Yes.
So, you know, Putin and Trump were hardly likely to be in a position to announce an immediate ceasefire without one of the warring parties being there.
Well, yes, but Trump, of course, had said that he would be disappointed if he were to walk away and that there was not a ceasefire. Well, he must therefore be disappointed this morning on the basis that hasn't happened. Also, Trump being the man, of course, that said when he took office that he would solve the problem of the war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. Well, we are now several months on. But look, without putting too fine a point on it, I think that the Trump intervention, despite the fact that, of course, he is naive if he thinks that he is going to resolve this quickly, particularly with the ego that is probably even more monumental than his own, and that is that of Vladimir Putin. But I think his intervention ultimately will be helpful. I think, even though he's a bull in a china shop and he's no diplomat in terms of his diplomatic style, if you want, I suspect that the dialogue that will now ensue and the forthcoming meetings, there will be now a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, I think it might come to something. And I'll tell you why I think that. And that is because Putin and Zelensky are at a stalemate. They have been for 2.5 to 3 years in terms of land grab, and certainly when it comes to, first of all, the human cost of this conflict, but of course the financial cost, both to Russia and, I was going to say, to Zelensky in the Ukraine, but it's mainly the West, because, of course, we've been funding it for the last 2.5 years or so. I think all of these men, Trump included, but particularly Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky, need a door to reverse out of with some kind of dignity because of the size of their egos. So I suspect Trump being the deal maker as such, the referee, I think he could facilitate that, Pete.
This could have been dealt with 2.5 years ago if we'd had any significant politician on this planet with some courage. And we didn't have Johnson, no courage, Biden, no courage whatsoever. And I'll tell you how this could have been resolved. On the day that Russia invaded a sovereign territory, which is Ukraine, Boris Johnson and other leaders could have gone to Vladimir Zelensky and said, right, there you go, sign there and you're a part of NATO.
NATO, yeah.
Right? You're in. You're in.
It would have solved it immediately.
Within weeks, we would have smashed Putin's troops all the way back to Moscow.
Well, we would have ended up with one of two situations, either Putin backing off, which of course would be very uncharacteristic, or World War III, I guess.
No, but you see, so many people fell into this trap with Putin and his nuclear threats, right? Putin has such a huge opinion of himself and is such a narcissist that actually, you know, we could drop a nuke, I say we, us and our allies, could drop a nuke right between Putin's eyes if we wanted to. And Putin knows that. He wasn't going to go and start a nuclear war over NATO troops
that he would ultimately
lose back to Moscow.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do that.
But he has shown, Pete, hasn't he, Putin, I think, unfortunately for him, the weakness of the Russian military. You know, the whole kind of bare-chested horse-riding Putin, you know, thumping his chest and, you know, trying to give us the perception that the bear, so to speak, in terms of the Russian military might, is greater than anything else on the planet. What we've seen over the last 3 years, I think, as a consequence, really, of the very lacklustre progress that the Russian military have made, you know, not least the casualties that they've taken, both at rank and file level, but also generals and so on. What we've actually seen is that the Russian military is nothing like we thought it was. I mean, he's really shown his hand to be much, much weaker than it really was.
And he claimed within 3 days of the invasion, he would be parading around the parliament, the grand cathedrals, and all the other significant buildings in Kyiv. And he didn't, and he's nowhere near it because. And what's his army now? Full of conscripts taken from prisons and such like, and dragged off the streets and being slaughtered in their thousands.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we talk a lot about the hostages in Gaza, as we should, and the fact that there are still some unreleased. But Vladimir Putin, of course, has kidnapped lots and lots of children, actually, from the Ukraine, which no one ever seems to talk about. Now, when it comes to any peace deal, any ceasefire, surely the return of those hostages should be paramount in any conversation, one would imagine. But the mainstream media are not talking about those thousands of people that have effectively been taken off the street and held to ransom.
Whether it be Putin, whether it be Hamas, whether it be Hezbollah, whether it be any of those kind of characters and organisations, they understand one thing and one thing only, and that is the language of violence, of might, of power. And you have to utilise all of those things if you want to put those people and keep them in their place. If we'd gone in and pushed Putin's troops back, which we could have done relatively easily, swiftly, efficiently, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
And the way that this plays out, though, of course, is that there will ultimately be a concession of territory. That's what's going to happen. And I think, OK, Zelensky obviously needs to sign up to that, but I think he's going to be put in a position where if the money is threatened to dry up from Europe and the United States in terms of funding the Ukraine effort, if that threat is played out from the West on the basis that Zelensky otherwise doesn't give up any territory, well, look, it's going to put Zelensky in an impossible position. So I think he's going to have to end up accepting the annexing of the Donbass region.
And if territory is surrendered to Putin, you have appeased an aggressor.
And do you think Poland's next?
Where will be next? Precisely. You will encourage him in his quest to re-establish the USSR, which is essentially
what he wants to do.
What he wants to do.
Because he sees himself as a 21st century Stalin. Talking of inappropriate behaviour, Ricky Jones. Now, you and I talked about this when I was hosting yesterday. This rather surprising verdict insofar as Ricky Jones being cleared of inciting violence. Let's just have a look at this.
We've got children and women using those trains, destroying the summer relatives. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
They are disgusting Nazi fascists and they should have their throats cut and be killed. That says a jury, and let's be very, very clear. There's been a lot of confusion, shall we say, on social media, I think it's fair to say, over the last 12 hours or so, with regard to lots and lots of commentators not seeming to understand that this was a jury decision. So this was not the judiciary. The judiciary perhaps would have given direction insofar as the trial over the last 4 or 5 days, but it was ultimately a jury decision at Snaresbrook County Court, Crown Court. So that is as it is. I think we should understand. But there's been a lot of talk, Pete, about this being an example of two-tier justice, but there are lots and lots of reasons why the likes of Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary that called this two-tier justice yesterday, are wrong, because this is not the same situation as Lucy Connolly.
No, it's different in many, many regards. Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty. Ricky Jones pleaded not guilty and had a trial. I can't help but think that Lucy Connolly was very poorly advised. But anyway,
and we have to ask ourselves who by, right? Whether was it state/court-appointed lawyers, or was it her own? Because I think there's a big question here. This is probably the main debate for me over the next few days. Who were the lawyers that gave Lucy Connolly the advice, which was to say that she should plead guilty rather than facing otherwise on the basis of a non-guilty and a not guilty plea, potentially longer on remand than she would have done as a consequence of a sentence?
Well, let's rewind a little bit then, shall we, to last year and those appalling post-Southport riots and disturbances that we saw, and I'm sure we all condone. What happened was when people got arrested, and I speak from having spent time with a young man who was arrested at the Westminster demonstration. Do you remember the one that happened in Westminster?
Yeah.
All at the same kind of time
Several.
as all the other events were playing out. And he was a young man who got arrested at that Westminster one. And he was put under considerable pressure by a solicitor appointed to represent him, not a CPS lawyer, not a prosecuting lawyer, a defence lawyer. He was put under huge pressure to plead guilty. He said, but I didn't do anything. He said, the only thing I did was bend down to help a woman who dropped her phone in the melee as the police encroached upon them. He said, and I helped her and she fell over and she lost a shoe. He said, and now I'm being accused of all sorts of things which I fundamentally did not do. The lawyer said, well, just accept a guilty plea to a lesser charge and it'll all go away. He said, I'm not doing that. He said, I'm absolutely not doing it. Fortunately, this young man managed to ring his dad, who's a mate of mine, and is a man of some means, and said, whatever you do, son, if you've not done anything, don't plead guilty to it. This young man was remanded in custody, okay, and held in prison for a few days.
On what charge?
Oh,
incitement.
To start off, it was a fray, violent disorder.
And I remember these scenes. Westminster in particular was when, and forgive me if I'm wrong, because I want to get this right, I don't want there to be any bias creeping in here. Now, as I understand it, and from what I saw of those protests in Westminster and elsewhere, but particularly Westminster, was when the police then decided to kettle protesters, peaceful protesters, and then were randomly running in and, you probably have a police term for this, but extracting people from those protests, even though it appeared to me that those people were not committing offences, dragged them out and arrested them. It seemed as though it was not only unnecessary, but kind of provocative almost on the part of the police. So he was part of that, and he was, and I'd say he fell victim to that, it seems.
So he was charged, remanded in custody, spent 4 or 5 days in prison, while his father, this is a young man with no previous convictions, he's inquisitive about politics, he knows what he thinks is right, and actually he's going to join the army, okay? That's how he wants to serve his country. So he gets remanded into prison. Now you imagine any kind of conviction being born out of this arrest would scupper his career prospects. And his dad said, get your head down, I'll get a lawyer. Eventually he was granted bail. There was a special bail hearing and he was granted bail.
Unlike Lucy Connolly.
Indeed. And then at a later stage, his defence counsel applied to the court to have the case listed for a judge to look at the evidence pre-trial, before an actual trial.
As a summary trial as such? So
No, at a Crown Court, in front of a judge,
okay,
right, at the Inner London Crown Court. And I went to that. And the defence counsel stood up and their argument was, there just isn't the evidence here. Sling this case out. And video was shown and there was a pathetic presentation by the prosecution. And the judge retired, and within a matter of a few minutes he came back into the court and said, I concur entirely with what the defence say. There simply is no evidence whatsoever to support the charge. And he slung it out,
right,
quite rightly so. If that young man, however, had bowed to the pressure put on him by a solicitor who was supposed to be representing his best interests, he would have gone to prison. He would have a conviction that would have scuppered his career chances in going into the army and serving his country, and goodness knows what other impact that would have had. I fear many others bowed to that pressure to enter early guilty pleas.
Well, they did, and many have been incarcerated on the basis of that advice being taken and accepted. They pleaded guilty and are now serving sentences. Lucy Connolly, of course, famously 31 months. Peter Lynch, of course, who then committed suicide in prison. A man with his own mental health issues who you could easily argue, I think, was caught up in this as a legitimate peaceful protester and unfairly convicted stroke given a sentence that was completely and utterly disproportionate. So the question is, we've got to go to break in a minute, but maybe we'll carry on the answer to this question after it, but just help me out, if you will, before we go to break with this. Where's the pressure coming from, Pete, do we think? Do we think this is just overzealous woke police officers that have a political agenda, or is this coming from the very top? Is this coming from Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer, who is the Attorney General? We know that Lord Hermer intervened with regard to the Lucy Connolly case in terms of signing off the sentence effectively, and also, it seems, being involved with pressure not to give Lucy Connolly bail, which I think is outrageous. Political pressure on the judiciary. Do we think this is coming from the top, or is this a political agenda by senior police officers?
We do not think, we know. Look at the comments that Keir Starmer and Sir Mark Rowley, Commissioner of the Met Police, made at the time. They talked about the full force of the law, the full might of the judiciary, all those kind of statements that they were making at the time. We know where it came from.
Let's continue this after the break. Interesting stuff, revelations. Get involved, by the way, 0344 499 1000. I'm sure you will have a view on the Ricky Jones verdict yesterday and whether you think it does represent and resemble two-tier justice. We'll get into a bit more detail in terms of exactly what happened yesterday with regard to the verdicts. Obviously, Peter Bleksley is very much across this. We're also going to be talking about the wonderful individual that is this so-called TikTok migrant that we spoke about yesterday, actually, Parwiz Hanifyar, who has a rather interesting repertoire when it comes to how-to guides on TikTok, including not only how to get across the channel with your hand out and take as much as you possibly can from the British taxpayer, but also the wonderfully titled How to Kill Your Wife. More on that when we come back. Welcome back, 6:31. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips, here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. Talking of Peters, I'm joined by Peter Bleksley for the next hour or so. Judging by your calls and your texts, you're rather liking the first half an hour of this. We will inject some more humour, some more light-hearted stuff as we go on, but we need to get the tough stuff out the way, really. It's hard to be humorous, frankly, about the likes of Ricky Jones, even though he's been cleared of the offence of inciting violence towards legitimate protesters that he labels as Nazis and says that they should have their throats cut. We did take the mickey out of Gary Lineker. I think that was fairly light-hearted because he's useless and definitely not worth 1.2 million quid of our money and so on. But we are now going to talk some more about this TikTok migrant. This name should be burned into your brains, ladies and gentlemen. Parwiz Hanifyar. As we speak, Parwiz Hanifyar, you can see on YouTube here, is literally lying in bed in a 4-star Heathrow Hotel with all of the trappings and adornments that you would expect from such a place. No doubt he's got a buffet downstairs waiting for him, breakfast open till 10 o'clock, have what you like. And later on, by the way, we'll be reading out all of the wonderful benefits, all of the wonderful things that as a migrant to this country you can have and expect. And Parvez Hanifyar is really taking that to the extreme, to the extent that he has provided a very, very helpful video on TikTok to all of his friends back in wherever he hails from, I don't know, Afghanistan, Syria.
Afghanistan.
Yeah, or anywhere really. I mean, of course, he could have come from India, Vietnam even. Lots of places that, despite the fact they're not war-torn, people come from those places and still play the asylum card. Be very clear, Parvez Hanifyar and others, they're not refugees, they're not fleeing any persecution. If they were, they would bring their wives, their sisters, their mothers and their children with them, and they don't do that. They are here with their hands out to get all the free stuff that we stupidly, as British government and its taxpayers, give them. But not content with having his hand out and having all of these wonderful benefits given to him, including this free 4-star hotel with everything that goes with it, Parvez Hanifyar decided, actually, when he was residing in Germany, and we'll come back to that in a second as to why he's here, not in Germany, he decided to put a video up which explains very, very succinctly, in much detail, how to kill your wife and how to get away with it on the basis that, despite perhaps being Muslim and being anti-alcohol, you should down a bottle of spirit and that will allow you to get off the hook as far as the judicial system in Britain, because of course, as we rehearse plentifully on this channel, it is woke, it is broke, it is ultra liberal, and he says in this video, as a consequence, you'd only do 7 years and you can come out and marry someone else and perhaps kill them too. Pete, you couldn't make this up, could you?
Name and shame. He's in the Heathrow Crown Plaza Hotel.
Is he?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
So let's get that out there.
Yeah.
Right.
But also the extension of this story that in fact I think the Sun have revealed today. Of course, we had the Sun here yesterday. Thomas, one of the journalists that had broken this story yesterday, and they've embellished it even further to say that they found out that he's fled from Germany because actually, despite being an asylum seeker that presumably was still part of the asylum process, he'd found a job in a Berlin branch of a chicken and kebab takeaway called Munchies, I kid you not, but got fired because despite having a job in the Western world, you'd think he'd be grateful and appreciative, he couldn't be bothered to turn up on time.
Yeah, and let's give credit where it's due to the Sun for doing such great work on this. The video on how to kill your wife has been taken down by the social media platform, about time too, but not before it got about 900,000 views, as I understand it. And this Hanifyar has been in Germany, got booted out of there, gone via France, obviously got from there over to here.
They bust him here, as we've seen from footage this week. Bust him from France to the shores of Calais, helped him onto a boat, and then the RNLI presumably have helped him on the last bit of the journey so that he could be received with warm open arms by Border Force and taken directly to a 4-star
Them
hotel.
or a Border Force cutter vessel, quite possibly, yeah, indeed. And he has done videos from the Crown Plaza Hotel, showing the room, showing the facilities, boasting about what he's got, encouraging people in their droves to come to the UK, telling them how to do it, following that route. And so undoubtedly people will watch that and be inspired by this piece of garbage.
Isn't he effectively part of, I mean, he's the equivalent of one of the gangs that Keir Starmer has said many, many times over the last 18 months or so he seeks to smash. I mean, this guy is effectively an advert for fake asylum seekers. Yet, I think as we speak, he is still in that 4-star hotel in Heathrow.
Yeah, imagine if he'd been doing this in America. By now, he'd be in an orange jumpsuit, shackled, hand and
surrounded
foot.
by alligators.
Yes, and on his way out of the US, which quite frankly is exactly what should happen to this bloke. But when we say he's in the Crown Plaza, please bear in mind that he undoubtedly will have been given a phone at some point.
Which he's then using to mock us.
Yes, they are not detained in these hotels. He might have used that phone to ring a fellow Afghan who's got into this country illegally, and goodness knows how long ago, right? And he could have legged it from that hotel. He might not be there. And the authorities will have no idea wheresoever, quite possibly, this person is, and this could be replicated time and time and time and time again.
Well, let's just have a little recap, shall we, in terms of the up-to-date numbers. So there have been 51,123 Channel migrants arrive on these shores since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister on the 5th of July 2024. The migrant numbers just for 2025, so just for the last 7 and a bit months, 27,881, and during August alone we are only halfway through 2,445 migrants. Pete, I think you tweeted yesterday actually how many we've seen in just the last 3, 4
in the
or 5
last
days.
6 days, which didn't include yesterday's figure because that hadn't been published yet. 2,042 in 6 days.
Yeah.
In 6 days only.
Yeah.
2,042.
And we have this false rhetoric, this spin, these lies, this deception from, of course, the Labour government, from Yvette Cooper as our hapless Home Secretary and Keir Starmer, who continue to try and gaslight us that actually this is not a problem anymore, or according to Jackie Smith, who of course is an ex-Home Secretary, actually it's not their fault, there's nothing they can do about it. But despite all of the rhetoric and, you know, the whole smashing the gangs nonsense, which we always knew was nonsense, and guess what? It's turned out to be nonsense. We are now seeing more and more of these migrants coming over. And this is just the migrants on boats. Don't forget, there's still some coming over on lorries.
Oh, backs of lorries hidden, concealed.
Yeah. So anonymous. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their records are. The other thing I want to talk about before we go to another break. God, this is really whizzing, isn't it? This show. It's 20 to 7 nearly already. I want to talk about the fact that often on footage that we see on social media outside of these migrant hotels, whether it's the Barbican, Canary Wharf, whether it's Epping or whatever, we have seen footage of Harris fencing, police officers, protesters and counter-protesters, right? So just have that in your mind in terms of the scene being set. And then all of a sudden a police officer opens up the Harris fencing, and what pops out? But 3 or 4 balaclavaed individuals on mopeds with boxes on the back. And I don't want to label any one company as culpable here specifically. Let's just call them food delivery riders, shall we? Asylum seekers are not permitted to work. It seems to me, let's be very obvious and clear here, tell it how it is, that there are a number of asylum seekers that are coming here and not just taking 4-star hotels and buffets and free driving lessons and goodness knows what else we are throwing at them, but they are working illegally and under false pretenses somehow as food delivery riders. That's clear, isn't it? They definitely are doing that.
Is the roll of shame for the last 6 days, okay? And I'm sorry to ruin everybody's breakfast.
We're supposed to be doing this with humour.
But my humour's gone for a walk for a few minutes.
We'll be back with some tongue-in-cheek in a second, but carry on, Pete. Go on.
9th of August, 435 in 7 boats. 10th of August, 281, 5 boats. 11th of August, 474 in 8 boats. 12th of August, 445 in 6 boats. 13th of August, last one I promise you, 325 in 4 boats. And so it goes.
There was reports this week that there's now a super boat. So these boats take famously, of course, about 80 people each, which is why, again, our hapless Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said, I know what I'll do. I'll come down very heavily on anyone that comes over in a boat if there's more than 80 people in it, which is a bit like saying, I'm going to nick the getaway driver for speeding at 35 and a 30 as he leaves the bank. I mean, it's pathetic. It's ridiculous. Look, the humour's back, everybody. The humour's back. But there's now super boats where the smugglers now have such abandon when it comes to their concern about being caught that they're now finding ways of getting more migrants here quicker in bigger boats. There's also, and I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, it is apparent that you can upgrade when you're in those boats. So if you are a people smuggler that has spent, let's say, £2,000 as a consequence of seeing one of these videos, actually, maybe from Parwiz Hanafiar, who is the ambassador for migration, it seems, from third world countries, that yes, you can have more leg room. I don't know if there's a buffet service, Pete, on these boats as they come over. Maybe there's a little in-boat movie.
Well, we've all like to get on an aeroplane and turn left, wouldn't we? But us commoners, we all turn right.
But now you can as a
maybe
migrant.
you get on one of them and turn left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, you can. Yeah, you sit where you like. So maybe you can choose your seat. You know, do you want to be on the end? Do you want to be
Extra
at the front?
leg room.
Yeah, at the back. You know, it's only another 250 quid.
Yeah.
I kid you not. I mean, this is the way these people smugglers, these gangs that, by the way, generally aren't here. By the way, they're in other countries, which means they're outside of our jurisdiction, which means we can't smash them even if we want to. That they are the two fingers that the gangs are sticking up at the British government and indeed the British people. OK, more of this when we come back. We're also going to be talking about JD Vance and a pub in the Cotswolds that I'm going to rather fondly suggest you boycott. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's 6:43. I'm still joined by Peter Bleksley. We're going to talk about pubs now and the fact that you would imagine if you were the owner of a pub, if you were a landlord owning a business that you wanted to promote and indeed to thrive, that the prospect of the Vice President of the United States popping in for lunch with his family would be PR manna from heaven, wouldn't it? Oh no. The bull in the Cotswolds decided, or rather the staff, it seems, the serving staff, no doubt the chefs, the hospitality staff at the Bull there in the Cotswolds, decided that despite having served Kamala Harris a few days previously, that the prospect of JD Vance, arguably the second most powerful man on the planet, the elected, I remind you, Vice President of the United States, on news that he was going to pop in and give them probably the best bit of PR, the best public relations coup you could ever dream up in your life. No, they said, we're not serving him. And they cancelled his reservation. Now, I'm not quite sure who owns that pub and whether they were party to this decision, but I would suggest that as the owner or owners, either as a company or an individual of the Bull pub, the fact that you allowed that to happen and gave in to your woke staff, your activist left-leaning staff, was bad enough. But the fact that, OK, I am talking about the Bull, but in the wrong terms, the fact that you looked over, that you forewent that incredible PR opportunity with the world's media, cameras clicking, cameras rolling from a news perspective outside of your pub to basically immortalise it for weeks and months to come. The fact that you fell over and stubbed your toe on that opportunity is one of the dumbest things, and I say this as a PR guy, by the way, is one of the dumbest things I think I've ever seen or come across in my life. So I think not only is it stupid on the part of the owners of that pub to have effectively barred the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance, but I think that we should repay them in kind, Peter Bleksley, by boycotting the Bull pub.
Now, this may come as a surprise to viewers and listeners, but I'm quite familiar with this part of the world. Yes.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say the pub, because as an ex-copper, you probably know every pub in the southeast of England, I suspect.
The Cotswolds, right? I'm familiar with the Cotswolds, and I'll tell you how that came about, if I may, right? During World War II, my dear mum, who's approaching her 97th birthday and is still bringing us joy every day, was evacuated eventually to the Cotswolds, right? And she lived in a place called Chadlington, which is near Chipping Norton. We all know about the Chipping Norton set, don't we?
And Clarkson's Farm and the Farmer's Dog, and it's very cool.
I've been to the Diddley Squat Farm shop on a number of occasions because his Hawkstone lager is absolutely unbelievable, but it's an occasional treat.
Sorry, I think there's a case of Hawkstone lager on its way to Peter Bleksley's house as we speak.
It's an occasional treat because it is rather expensive.
Expensive, isn't it?
So save up if you want to create a Hawkstone. Right, anyway, so I know Chipping Norton and Chadlington, right? And Charlbury, which is where the Bull is where the railway station that my granddad used to go to when he visited his children, in other words, my mum and my aunties and uncles, every couple of weeks rather, during the war.
So you were basically conceived near this pub?
Well, no, but my mum was evacuated.
What a horrible thought.
Of that. I wasn't conceived during the Second World War, yeah, so-and-so. I might look like I was, but anyway. So I know this part of the world. I go there regularly. The lady that my mum was evacuated to is still alive. There's family down there, you know, and it is a beautiful part of the world. It really is. But let me tell you, the staff at the Bull in Charlbury would have a very, very different attitude if they had a migrant hotel in Charlbury. How long would it take them to change their minds if in that beautiful Cotswold village every night there was groups of men hanging around in the park that the children used to like?
I don't know, it sounds, Pete, like they're so woke they would be the counter-protesters saying all refugees welcome with their pre-made banners, no doubt.
Yes, until the reality bites.
Well, of course, until common sense prevails. We should point out, by the way, the pub has been asked for comment. We have asked them to comment on this revelation, this stupidity, I would argue, and the pub has doggedly declined to comment in response to all media inquiries to confirm or deny that they cancelled the VP's planned dinner. It makes no sense at all, does it? And again, it does come back to the whole freedom of speech thing, doesn't it? I mean, do they have the right to ban him? I guess as a private business they do. But let's just be clear, he is the elected Vice President of the United States. It's not as if he took power by coup. You know, he's not some horrible South American dictator. This is not a Vladimir Putin. This is not a Kim Jong-un. I mean, he is a legitimately democratically elected member of the US administration, and they seek, because of their own warped, woke, left-wing, ultra-liberal, ridiculous views, to stop him having lunch with his family.
Last month, Kamala Harris had dinner in the Bull.
And that was okay. So they can't now advance the argument, we don't do politics, because, yes, the nearly, not quite, President of the United States
but believe you me, all these people with these woke attitudes, these woke ideals and all of that, who have the great good fortune to live in a truly breathtakingly beautiful part of the country, will very, very soon change their minds when they've got migrant hotels in Chipping Norton, in Charlbury, in all these other kind of places. You just wait and see how quickly people's attitudes change. And when you live in a beautiful part of the Cotswolds, you are woken up by a call to prayer instead of a cockerel. Let's see what your attitudes are then.
Well, and also, we're going to go to break in a second, but my kind of last word on this before we go to break and come back and talk about data breaches, because yes, there's been another one that relates to the Ministry of Defence, is that if we end up in a situation where entities like pubs decide who they can serve based on that potential customers' political credentials, well then they shouldn't be surprised if everyone of that political persuasion, in this case on the centre-right, does boycott their pub. The pub then closes and those idiots that decided not to serve JD Vance end up losing their jobs. That would be what we would call, Pete, poetic justice.
It might well be. but
go on, final word.
But you know, my kids, not so long ago, went to university, okay? And of course, as per usual, got converted into Marxist lunatics, right?
You should throw them out the house.
They've been travelling, typically middle-class thing, which working class parents.
We'll do this when we come back. We've got to go to a break. We've got to pay for this stuff somehow. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk. We're having fun here. Join in 0344 499 1000. Back after this. Welcome back. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. I'm here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. I'm also back tomorrow. They're going to have me back. That will be 3 days on the trot. What's wrong with this place? Anyway, it's 5 to 7, and it's time to talk about this.
Yeah, so Christmas. It's not really, you know, and it comes round and you're all like, ding, 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 only a new and the boy, them might pay the body. Oh, God bless her. And we say, come in. You go, oh, thank you. And come on, oh, here's yours. I hope you like it. Oh, it doesn't see you at all.
Yeah, so I'm actually taking a picture of Peter Bleksley's face. I genuinely have just done that, because Peter Bleksley just watched that for the first time, which is the national treasure. I say that with big big inverted commas that is Dawn French. Now Dawn French, of course, famously a little while ago made, let's just say, rather the faux pas when she came out with similar gibberish insofar as her rather unfunny but meant as comedic view on Gaza, where she effectively lampooned, it seems, this is my interpretation, the victims of October the 7th. Now, it's being speculated that Dawn French may have, we don't know this for sure, but may have been dropped by Marks and Spencer's where their forthcoming Christmas advert is concerned. Watching that and listening to that, if that is true, if she has been dropped, I think we all now realise why. So this would not just be any cancellation, it would be a Marks and Spencer's cancellation, Peter Bleksley.
There's an old music hall song which goes, "Don't put your daughters on the stage, Mrs. Worthington." And it's from many years ago. And it's a very kind of, you can look it up, I'm sure it'll be out there.
Are we going back to the war again here now?
Yes, all right.
You keep going back to it.
Yes. And there's a message in it. You know, it can be a risky thing, sending your people into show business, your kids into show business. I do have sympathy for people who have had huge success when they're younger, you know, really huge success, and then they struggle to try and stay relevant as the spotlight shines elsewhere. Their star begins to fade, they can't handle it, and they think they've got to be relevant, they've got to be popular, they've got to keep themselves out there, and they get reduced to doing things like that on TikTok.
When you say the star fades, I mean, did Dawn French ever have such a star? Was it ever shining, frankly, in terms of comedy? I mean, it's a bit like her ex-husband, Lenny Henry. I mean, I just don't think he's ever been funny. I don't think Dawn French has ever been funny. I mean, maybe as a character actor in The Vicar of Dibley, she wasn't bad, but I guess, I don't know if she wrote that or not, I suspect not. But as a comedienne in Dawn French, French and Saunders.
Yeah, French and Saunders was huge.
Yeah, it was. But again, I can't remember, you know, my side splitting much as a consequence of watching Dawn French in any scenario. So I hear what you say, but I mean, she really is the has-been that never was.
No. She was big at one point, and just because they're not our cup of tea.
Nice. That's not very nice.
Oh yeah, of course, yes. Just because they're not our cup of tea, we mustn't deny the fact that she's been in some hugely popular and very successful television shows. But what is undeniable now is that her star is waning, and I don't think she can handle it.
It's not just waning. I mean, that rant that we have just shown you, that we're still showing, albeit with the sound off, which is the best bit, by the way, it's deranged, Pete. It's deranged.
Yeah, I mean, she
I mean, your face, I mean, I know it was genuine because you didn't know we were going to show that. I mean, that's why I had to take a picture of it. I mean, you were completely and utterly gobsmacked by that performance of hers just now, which, you know, no one's forced her to do that, by the way. She's picked up her phone one morning and she's decided to put that display on her social media. I mean, as if she thinks either it's funny, relevant or whatever. I mean, it's hardly endearing her, is it, to an audience, particularly the shareholders and the executive bosses in the marketing team at Marks and Spencer's, potentially.
It should come with that good old warning, please drink responsibly. I mean, I've no idea whether she'd had a booze or not when she did that. And believe you me, I've put some utter drivel out there after I've had a drink. But, you know, my star's never shone, so it can't wane, you see.
Yeah.
But that is...
Well, maybe she's been... You're suggesting potentially she's been at the Marks and Spencer's liquid hamper. Of course, I'm sure that's not the case, Dawn French, but that was definitely deranged, frankly. Well, look,